Okay, so today we're going to take a deep dive into some concerns that have been raised about Algerian television programs that are coming out during Ramadan 2025. What we're going to be looking at is actually the transcript of a YouTube video by Mohammed Al-Farquaki. So we're really going to try to figure out, like what are the specific criticisms and what are the values that are being expressed here?
Yeah. I mean, I think right off the bat, what's really striking is the strong language that the speaker is using in this video.
Hmm.
He really characterizes these upcoming Ramadan series as like a huge catastrophe. They've crossed all boundaries. They're really inviting immoral actions and vice.
Wow, so strong words right out of the gate.
Absolutely.
So can you give me maybe just like a specific example of something that they point out?
Sure. One of the things that the video really highlights is this. There's a storyline that features a young girl. She's in secondary school.
Yeah.
And she's in a romantic relationship. And in the series, she actually stays out all night.
Mm.
And then she goes and buys a pregnancy test.
Oh, wow.
And all of this is happening within a series that's intended for family viewing during Ramadan.
You're right.
So it's quite a striking storyline to feature, during this holy month.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely seems like it's not just about this specific story, but more about sort of an overall anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a broader anxiety about, the sanctity of Ramadan, about Algerian family values, about like the ethics of their society and how people are brought up, and Algerian traditions as well.
And the speaker seems to be taking a really firm stance against it personally, right?
Absolutely. They even explicitly say they disown and seek refuge in God from such actions and, any education that's promoting these ideas.
Oh, wow. So it's like a total moral rejection.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because they go on to talk about like the motivations of the creators.
Yeah.
What do they have to say about that?
So the speaker in the video actually suggests that there's a deliberate intent to almost attack the Algerian family. And to attack the way Algerian women and children are raised.
Yeah.
And so they imply that these portrayals are really damaging, that Algerian children are not inherently this way. But by showing this kind of content, you're almost like encouraging them to behave that way.
So it's sort of like, even if these things exist, in society, the fact that they're being broadcast in these television series is seen as a way of promoting them or normalizing them, particularly during Ramadan.
Right. And that's a key point of contention. It's like, why are we giving this a platform? Why are we showcasing this to everyone?
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's also a point where the speaker sort of directly challenges the creators, right?
Yeah. The speaker gets very pointed and rhetorically asks, the screenwriter and the director if they have daughters and if they would be okay with a similar storyline involving their own children.
Yeah, so it's bringing it home, like making it a very personal sort of appeal.
Exactly. It really questions like, what are the values you're putting forward here?
And that questioning also seems to extend to the people who are responsible for what actually makes it to air.
Oh, yeah. The video criticizes, the montage editor and the audiovisual review committee, these gatekeepers. It's like, how could you let this kind of content be broadcast?
Yeah.
Especially during Ramadan.
Yeah. And it makes you think about, the responsibility that comes with shaping public content, especially during a time like Ramadan.
Absolutely.
It also seems like there's a really clear call to action in this video, right?
Yeah. It's a very strong call to action. The speaker urges viewers to boycott these series, hit them where it hurts, don't watch, and then demands that, authorities and monitoring bodies really re-examine and stop these broadcasts from happening.
It's fascinating, too, because the speaker points out the fact that there are millions of viewers for these programs, despite this idea that people don't watch television during Ramadan.
Right. Like, who is actually watching this stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So there's this really interesting sort of paradox.
Yeah, there is.
And how does the video conclude?
Well, the video ends on a very firm note. The speaker states that Ramadan, Algerian families, and the core ethics and traditions of Algerian society just completely disown this kind of content.
So it's pretty decisive final thought.
Yeah, very much so.
So if we kind of step back and look at everything we've talked about, what's sort of like the core takeaway from this deep dive?
I think the core takeaway is that there's a really strong disapproval of the content that's being shown in these Algerian Ramadan television programs. The speaker is very concerned that it's promoting immoral behavior and that it undermines these really fundamental values that are so important to Algerian society.
And a lot of that is tied into the cultural significance of Ramadan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the importance of family and tradition in Algeria.
Exactly.
So I guess For our listeners, one thing to think about is how do different societies deal with this complex relationship between media and their own core cultural values?
It's a tricky one.
Yeah, especially during these really important religious periods. And how might the way we interpret a story, how might that be totally different depending on your own cultural background and beliefs?
I think that's a really fascinating question. It makes you think about perspective and how there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer.
Yeah. It's all about understanding, the context.
Definitely.
Well, I think this has been a really insightful deep dive, and thanks to all of our listeners for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.